All right. Hopefully this time it works. All right. So, nutrition tracking database, Miles Pearson. And so my project description. What I kind of did here is I kind of compared it to what I did in my project proposal. And basically what I changed would be I basically just deleted a bunch of stuff. Like, I wanted to have it include as many stuff as possible. Like, I wanted vitamins, I wanted minerals, I wanted, you know, what type of vitamins, what type of calories, what type of proteins, and upon farther thought and research, I was like, that's really not going to work. Because, if you think about it, you go to a restaurant, they're going to give you a number of how many calories you got, how many fats, how many proteins. They're not going to, they're not going to classify each type of calorie, protein, etc. So I decided to change that aspect. And I also did not add as many nutrition types as I thought I would want to, because they're not used as often. Like, most people don't track minerals. Like, if you have a problem with iron deficiency, you have something medical going on most likely, or you're older individual. It doesn't work for most people, and it's not useful to most people. So I wanted to make this as versatile as possible and only track the things that most people would track when tracking their nutrients. That being said, I only track the consumption and classification of nutrients, and not the burning or loss of nutrients, which I originally wanted to do. And I'll get to why I didn't later on, but yeah. But honestly, I feel like I made the right choice, like it says down here. I feel as if most people are more likely to use the application if it's simpler to learn and use. So ultimately, I feel like I'm very proud of this project. So yeah, I feel like I made the right choice. Yeah. Okay, project description. So basically in this project, I have 5 main tables with one additional one, and it's a relationship table between, let's go on the tables first. Okay, so we got users, which basically tracks basic information about users, like height, weight, name, age, phone number, email, passwords, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and we got the food and meals, which are the main priority of this database. You can get the calories, protein, carbs, and fats. Those are the 4 nutrients I'm tracking. I don't know if I mentioned that up above, but that's where you go to track that. Okay. And then I also have a water and sleep table. Water table, I did add because some people like to keep track of their water consumption. People, I used to see it all the time. I still see it every now and again. But there's those people with the gallon jugs of water who walk around and they try to drink the whole thing by the end of the day, or maybe 2 of them. So I decided to include that as well, as I consider it a nutrient. You have to have it to survive. And I also did sleep. Now, this is kind of a exception to my not tracking the loss of nutrients. um, because people could use this in a few different ways, and the way I see that would most likely be used would be to track how many calories burnt, based off certain factors like, um, you know, metabolism, speed, gender, all that. Um, but you probably have to go to the doctor for that to get some of those equations and whatnot. But yeah, that is there for people who want it. Okay. Um, and then this is also describing an attribute I have in my meals and food categories down here. Sorry, I need to sneeze. Okay. It was originally supposed to be a table, but it worked the same as a attribute, as an entity, except the entity was way more complex. It looked more complex. It was more complex. So I figured it would be best to add it as an entity. But you can also track your food groups, like grain, dairy, um, proteins, vegetables, fruits. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, and it also does mention I wanted to include an exercise table as well. But yeah, it's just getting. I'll talk about that more later. I have a few slides describing some of the tables uh, I lost under project difficulties. But yeah. Okay. So this is my ER diagram. So it's kind of tricky to look at. I cleaned it up a lot. These lines, the relationship lines, they kind of do whatever they want sometimes, and it's rather annoying. But everything stemming from the user, which is all of them, is going to be a one-to-many relationship, and the meals to foods is going to be a many-to-many relationship, which makes sense because, if you're a user, one user is likely to consume more meals, water, food, because that's the point of the database to track all that. So, yeah. And then here's just a key for it, since it's kind of hard to look at. So I thought I'd include this too. Yeah, just naming all the attributes and the entities and the relationships. Okay, so business rules. This wasn't a part of the project, but I thought it was important to include it, so I did, because it kind of describes how I wanted the database to work. Okay, so first of all, the users table, I wanted that. I'm just going to summarize it. I'm not going to get into every little thing, but that's why I find user table, in summary, not public, right? So if you're a user, you won't be able to see other users, name, email, age, all that. So the thought behind this is you would create one row, and you would only see that one row information on their table, and then you would get the other 5 tables to work with, to track your individual dietary needs. Okay. So yeah, when it comes to food meal, okay, so this is going to be describing the contains relationship table. How this table is set up is it has the food ID, which is the food foreign key, and then the meals ID, which is the meals foreign key. And this connects the two in the most convenient way I found possible, because let's say you go make a home cooked meal, and it's on Freshly, or no, what's it called? One of the prep meal websites where they ship the food and give you all the nutrient stats and whatnot. Let's say you put this under the meals category, but you also want to track the individual foods in there. You know, like let's say you have like a steak, some potatoes, and some green beans. You know, if you want to track the individual stats of the plate as a whole, you can do that using that table, using those keys. You know, so like let's say the meal as a whole is meal ID 3. All right, and then you got those 3 plates under foods, so 8, 9, 10, and there you go. It would be linked that in that way. So yeah, I think that's the easiest way to describe it. So it's also describing the food category, which is in the foods and meals table. We got fruits, protein, dairy, vegetables, grain, or unclassified. You know, the unclassified is used for foods that are harder to classify. Like, let's say you're eating. I got one of these right here. A lightsaber. You know, that really doesn't really fit in any of the categories I can think of. So for that, you put unclassified. Multiple categories may be used. So like, you know, in the meals you have the steak, potatoes, green beans. So it would be classified as steak and vegetables if you want to. Or, you know, if you want to, you can just classify it as one. You know, main dish is steak, so just classify as protein if you want. It's up to user preference. So also want to talk about the main difference between the foods and meals category, right? The main difference is that the food category has serving size implemented. Has serving size, serving units, and serving size quantity, right? And what this does is it allows you to both input meals without a serving size and input meals with a serving size. So when I created this, I had, you know, 3 types of consumption types in mind. I had snacks, you know, just like a candy bar here or there, apple, whatever, right? You know, you could, the nutritional values is determined by serving size. I guess that was a bad example. Like, let's say you get one of those bag of chips and the serving size is, I think I have it up here. Let's not find it. It's 20 chips. But you eat 40. Or 45, or it just makes it a little bit easier to be able to classify and count the calories, right? So yeah, and like if you have like 2.5 serving sizes, you would be able to potentially use a query to multiply that out, and then you can see the total number of calories. But yeah, anything else? Oh yeah, and the meal so I went on a little rant there. Okay, so we got snacks, we got restaurant meals, and then we got home cooked meals. Those are the 3 consumption types I thought of, and so snacks would mainly be classified under food. Meals or restaurant meals would mainly be classified under meals, and home cooked meals could be either or, just depending on lifestyle, you know, just the ability to track the serving size. You know, like if you're cooking for a family, you're probably not going to be able to track the serving size. But like if you're single or like using one of those prep meal app things, you could do it a lot easier. Therefore, you could potentially put in the food category instead of meals. But yeah, it's just up to user preference. Okay, I think. Okay, so now we're moving into the queries. Got trivial query. What this does is it orders the food table to sort the data in alphabetical order of what the food category is. Okay, so it's a pretty simple one. So yeah, you see up here, it's just dairy, fruit, all that. Okay, and then we got our medium difficulty queries. I'm just gonna speed through these. There was not a lot of. These were a tough time. I'll get to that. So this one, the query will only show data about our only occupant. That's another thing I should mention in the business rules. I only created, or I only put one person to represent all of the example data I put in here. So the thought process behind that, it was purposeful, right? But the thought process behind that is I would make a database of one person, since if a user gets these tables, that user's gonna be the only one in that table. So like the food category, like Linda is not gonna be under John. Is not gonna be in John's food table. She's gonna have her own food table. So that was the thought process behind that. If I had to go back and redo the assignment, I definitely would have added more people. I could have done a lot cooler things with the queries, and it would have been a lot easier on my part. So yeah. Okay, so we got that one, and then this one just calculates the water consumption 23rd, 24th. So yeah, 2.7. And this would be per consumption and not daily average. Okay. Subquery. This query receives meals from the meal table, the highest calorie count consumed by John. All right. Join query. This query makes a list of John and the food he has consumed with only the calories in the serving. Okay. So the other people are in here with both these as well. These are very similar. I basically just put different, like this one is tracking the foods and the calories in the food, and this one's tracking water. But yeah, they're very similar. Other people are in there just as null because I didn't input their data. Okay. View query. This is used to create a view of all the users. And their sleep records in one table. Okay, union query. What this query does is it creates a table of all the food categories and makes a list of variations used between the foods and meal foods. So, it just gives you a variation of the food category. So yeah, and notice how I said that you can combine the two. Yeah, there you go, like protein and grain, protein and vegetables, grain and protein. So it's just all the variants of it. Okay. Custom stored procedure. This one's probably my favorite one. I had no idea what I was doing when I initially stumbled on this one. I had to do a little research before I did it. But I'm really happy about this one because I feel like this one represents my database the best and what I was trying to do. Because I would imagine this being on the side of the developer, and then all you do is type in, the user ID right here, and I'm not gonna use my finger. I'm gonna use the mouse, but get user ID by 1. You know, if we had a different user, we could have put 2. But yeah, it just shows all the stats for John. Okay. Project difficulties. So probably the hardest project difficulty I had was number 1, shortest one to describe, figuring out what nutrition is and what aspects are most important to people. You can really see that if you compare what I did to my project proposal. Yeah, because I was way off. I basically just looked up all types of nutrients possible, you know, and then put it in there, because in my mind, I'm like, I want to give people the choice of what to track, but yeah, that would have been very ambitious. Very ambitious. Okay. What attributes to add, where to add them, how to implement them, and basic mapping of the database. This was probably, I take that back. Number 1 was probably not my biggest difficulty. It was probably number 2. I was dealing with this issue the entire process of building this database. Like, I dealt with it while I was adding the sub data, because I would realize, oh, okay, well, I should have a date for this one. You know, I should have a time for this one. You know, just little stuff like that usually, but there's some bigger stuff mixed in too. I'll get into it. I have a few slides down there that describe some of the tables chunks, you know. So, okay, the quarries. This one was partially my fault. I'm really not that great at it quite yet. I was probably able to do, you know, 5, maybe 6 without looking at just looking stuff online, you know, examples and whatnot. But man, like the other 5 or 4, like, and you probably notice I was missing one. I mentioned it in the Google Doc, but man, that's a story on its own. I kept getting this error. It was the custom sort the custom sort procedure. Custom function procedure, and it kept giving me this error no matter what I did. I spent a few hours of it on Thursday. I probably put like hour or 2 into it, and because I saw those, I'm like, I don't know what that is. So I worked on those first, and it kept giving me this error code. It was 1416, right? And I look online on what it is. I find tons of stuff, right? And but they all just give me one solution, and it was insert like these 2 lines of command, and if I do that, supposedly it's supposed to work. One just to the database and one to pop it, I suppose. But well, when I did that, it would give me an error message. I'll look that up, you know, and I'll try to fix that one. There was something about I don't even remember. It was a while ago, but yeah, it was just this rabbit hole. So I ended up not including that one. It only happened with that one. I mean, looking at like the custom stored procedure and they look very similar in nature, you know, and I thought that I could get it to work. I was just doing something wrong, but I think something's up with like the software in general, you know. Some setting got flicked or something, I don't know. But yeah. Okay, so scrap tables, login table. I scrapped this before the project. Begun. This was in like the main brainstorming phase. So basically, why I scrapped this one was for two reasons. Okay, the first one, I want to make like a leaderboard type stats using the user data. So what I have as a user right now would be split into two tables: so the login info table and then the user table. I wanted to have the user table with like total calories, total like proteins, whatnot, and just have everyone's data, and this would be public. I didn't like this because I realized that this was actually very personal information, and I could do the same thing with quarries. Second reason I scrapped it was because I wanted the project to be centered around actual nutrition and not just have, 6 tables total and then 2 of them are just people's information. Yeah. But, okay, so now we got the exercise table. Reason for this got to the ER diagram phase, very complex, right? There's so many different types of exercise types, so many different types of uh, or the varying amounts of nutrition, which nutritions are getting burnt and whatnot during which exercises, and you know uh, what are you exercise. It just turned into like this whole thing, and I started work on it, and it like I had composite attributes of composite attributes. It was like I I realized when I got halfway through it, I had like twice as many attributes as all the other tables combined, and I'm like, this needs to be a database of its own. So, yeah, that's why I scrapped that one. But I tried to replace it with nutrients loss table. I thought this was gonna be simpler because it would basically be more of numbers than actual activities, but I kind of just ran into the same problem because like I did try to classify uh, lost calorie types. Like there's exercise, uh, there's idle, and then there's extreme exercise. It just turned into this whole thing. Like how would I classify this entity or or, or yeah, and then also the problem came is this stuff is really hard to track, right? Like you need someone linked to your body, or you need to get like equations by your doctor and a bunch of medical stats. And I'm like, I can make up a bunch of stuff, but like I started on this one, but like I was thinking about while I was starting, I'm like, this is just gonna be just as complex as the exercise table, if not more. So I scrapped that one too. I think I mentioned this one too. Food category table. Uh, this just it ended up being very complex. I ended up having this weird triangle shape between the meal foods and users, and uh, I would have had 2 additional relationship tables, um, and it would have just became like, yeah, it it it, it was a really complex way to just input one type of attribute that was unique. So yeah, that's kind of why I got rid of it. And then I realized like 30 minutes later, I'm like, why don't I just make an attribute for the foods and the meals? So that's what I did. And it works way better that way. It's a lot more simple, which I was going for. Okay, so this is the end. I thought I would end it off by saying, just name a few things I would do differently. The first one was definitely not wait till last minute for those quarries. I feel like that really messed me up. Um, Second would probably be uh, adding multiple users to the database to make the queries easier. Third would probably be a partner. I didn't do it. I've had bad experiences in the past. Like the people I worked with are brilliant, but man, it feels like I'm programming them sometimes, you know? Yeah, tell them exactly what to do. But yeah. Yeah. But I mean, usually when I work in projects, the whole thing gets done. You know, I'm not missing quarries or anything. So yeah. Yeah. I reckon that's everything. So I appreciate you watching.